Hey guys, tonight we are stepping back in time, way back, to a world of castles, kings, and very questionable hygiene. Imagine yourself in a drafty hall, tapestry swaying, the scent of wood smoke and unwashed bodies hanging heavy in the air. You are a trusted advisor to the king, privy to secrets that could make or break kingdoms. Of course, you probably won't survive this scenario. Dysentery, a stray arrow, or a king's displeasure are all pretty solid contenders for your demise. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Go on, tap that button. Okay? Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments, along with your local time. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The year is 1065. You find yourself in the heart of the English court, a place buzzing with whispers and anxieties. King Edward, later to be known as the Confessor, sits on the throne, but his grip on power feels tenuous, to say the least. He's getting old, increasingly frail, and, crucially, he has no direct heir. Now, in the 11th century, that's a major problem. Think of it like a reality TV show, but instead of fighting for a rose, everyone's vying for the crown, and the eliminations are far more permanent. You're privy to the inner circle. You see the worried glances exchanged between the powerful earls, the hushed conversations in darkened corners, and the barely concealed ambition in the eyes of various nobles. Everyone is sizing up the competition, positioning themselves for the inevitable power grab when Edward finally shuffles off this mortal coil. It's like Black Friday at the future Kings of England store. England, you see, is at a crossroads. Edward, who had spent a significant chunk of his life in exile in Normandy, more on that later, is deeply pious but perhaps not the most assertive of rulers. He's more interested in building Westminster Abbey, a truly magnificent structure, by the way, that would become the traditional site for English coronations, than in the rough-and-tumble business of securing his lineage. The main contenders for the throne? Well, that's where things get complicated. There's William, Duke of Normandy, a powerful and ambitious ruler across the Channel. He claims Edward promised him the throne years ago, a claim that's, shall we say, disputed. Then there's Harold Godwin's son, the most powerful earl in England, a shrewd and capable leader who seems to have the support of many of the English nobles. He also happens to be Edward's brother-in-law. A classic case of keeping it in the family, right? Historians still argue whether Edward truly intended for William to succeed him. The evidence is murky, relying heavily on Norman sources that might be, let's just say, slightly biased in favor of William. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, a primary source from the time, offers a different perspective, hinting at Harold's growing power and influence. Edward's reign has been relatively peaceful, but beneath the surface, tensions are simmering. The succession crisis is a powder keg waiting for a spark, and you, my friend, are standing right next to it. So, buckle up. This is going to be a bumpy ride. And try not to get stabbed in the back, okay? Into this tense atmosphere arrives Odo, Bishop of Bayeux. He's Edward's cousin on his mother's side, and a Norman through and through. Picture a man of considerable presence, radiating confidence, intelligence, and, well, a certain ruthlessness that makes you instinctively wary. He's not just a clergyman, he's a warrior bishop, a figure not uncommon in those days. Think of him as a religious leader with a serious side hustle in politics and, quite possibly, medieval MMA. You observe him closely as he enters the court. He moves with a purpose, his eyes constantly scanning, assessing, and calculating. He's dressed in rich fabrics, befitting his status, but there's a certain practicality to his attire, as if he's ready to switch from giving a sermon to wielding a sword at a moment's notice. Which, knowing Odo, he probably is. Odo wasted no time ingratiating himself with Edward. He's charming, witty, and seemingly devoted to the king's well-being. He advises Edward on matters both spiritual and secular, quickly becoming a trusted confidant. You notice, however, that his advice often seems to steer Edward in a direction that benefits Normandy and, more specifically, William. Subtle, but definitely there. The relationship between Edward and Odo is fascinating. Edward, the pious and somewhat detached king, seems genuinely fond of his cousin. He appreciates Odo's intelligence and his ability to get things done. Odo, on the other hand, appears to respect Edward but also sees him as malleable. A tool to be used, perhaps? You can practically see the gears turning in Odo's head as he plots his next move. One quirky tidbit, Odo was known for his lavish lifestyle. Despite his religious vows, he amassed a considerable fortune and lived in a style that would make even the most extravagant nobles blush. He wasn't exactly turning the other cheek, if you catch my drift. He also wasn't supposed to wield a sword, as a bishop. The solution? He used a mace, because bludgeoning people to death was apparently a clerical loophole. The English nobles, especially Harold Godwin's son, view Odo with suspicion. They see him as a foreign influence, a Norman interloper trying to undermine their power and advance William's interests. You overhear grumbling about Norman carpetbaggers and muttered warnings about divided loyalties. It's clear that Odo is not making many friends among the English aristocracy. You find yourself torn. On one hand, Odo is undeniably intelligent and capable. He brings a fresh perspective to the court and seems genuinely concerned about the stability of the kingdom. On the other hand, his Norman allegiance is undeniable, and you can't shake the feeling that he's playing a long game, one that could ultimately lead to England's subjugation by William. Historians often portray Odo as a key player in the events leading up to the Norman conquest. Some see him as a Machiavellian mastermind, pulling the strings behind the scenes and manipulating Edward to favor William. Others argue that he was simply a loyal cousin, trying to advise the king in the best way he knew how. The truth, as always, probably lies somewhere in between. The court becomes a battleground for influence, with Odo and Harold vying for Edward's ear. You navigate this treacherous landscape carefully, trying to stay on everyone's good side while also remaining true to your own principles. It's a delicate balancing act, and one wrong step could have dire consequences. As Odo's influence grows, whispers begin to circulate about the legitimacy of Edward's potential heirs. It's not that there are *no* candidates, it's more that their claims are complicated. Some are distant relatives, others are of questionable birth, and still others are simply not considered strong enough to rule. The lack of a clear and undisputed successor only adds fuel to the fire, making the succession crisis even more volatile. You hear rumors that Edward's own claim to the throne was not entirely straightforward. His father, Edward the Unready, yes, that was actually his nickname, talk about setting low expectations, had a rather eventful reign, marked by Viking invasions and political instability. Edward was forced into exile for a time, and his children, including Edward, were raised in Normandy. Some whisper that Edward's Norman upbringing made him lesser English in the eyes of some of his subjects. Like a medieval fish-out-of-water story. One of the more persistent rumors involves Edgar the Aetheling, a young member of the royal family with a decent claim to the throne. However, he's just a boy, and lacks the experience and political savvy to navigate the treacherous waters of the English court. Plus, he's, a child. Think of him as the cute but ultimately unqualified contestant on the Future King of England show. You overhear conversations in the royal kitchens and the stables, among the servants and the guards. They are worried. They know that a disputed succession could lead to civil war, and that their lives and livelihoods would be disrupted. They yearn for stability and certainty, but those seem increasingly elusive. The whispers intensify after Odo begins subtly questioning the strength of the various claims. He doesn't openly denounce anyone, but he raises doubts, sows seeds of suspicion, and generally makes everyone feel insecure about their chances. He's like a medieval lawyer, poking holes in every argument and creating an atmosphere of uncertainty. One particularly juicy tidbit: some claimed that Edward himself had taken a vow of chastity, thus precluding him from producing an heir. Whether this was true or not is debated, but the rumor certainly served to undermine his ability to secure the succession. Imagine being known for your piety but also for inadvertently causing a massive political crisis. You find yourself spending sleepless nights, pondering the implications of all this. Who should be the next king? Who could be the next king? And, perhaps most importantly, who do you want to be the next king? The wrong choice could have devastating consequences, not only for the kingdom but for your own personal safety. It's like choosing between a root canal and a colonoscopy. Neither option is particularly appealing, but you have to choose one. The political atmosphere becomes increasingly poisonous. Accusations fly, alliances shift, and trust erodes. You feel like you're walking on eggshells, constantly trying to avoid offending anyone or revealing your true thoughts. One wrong word could be your undoing. Historians have long debated the role of these succession anxieties in the events of 1066. Some argue that Edward deliberately avoided naming an heir, hoping to maintain peace and prevent infighting. Others believe that he simply couldn't make up his mind, or that he was manipulated by Odo and other powerful figures. Whatever the reason, the uncertainty surrounding the succession was a major contributing factor to the Norman conquest. You begin to notice a disturbing trend. King Edward is relying more and more on Odo for advice and guidance. It's not just on matters of state, it's on everything. From managing the royal finances to settling disputes between nobles, Odo is involved in every aspect of the king's life. It's as if Edward has become completely dependent on Odo, unable to make decisions without his input. You see Edward constantly turning to Odo for reassurance, seeking his approval, and deferring to his judgment. It's unsettling. You remember that crocodile-dung sunscreen the Egyptians used? Well, Edward seems to have developed a similar level of unwavering faith in Odo's advice. The English nobles are, understandably, furious. They see Odo as an outsider, a Norman puppet who is slowly but surely taking control of the kingdom. They resent his influence and fear that he is undermining their power and authority. The grumbling intensifies, and you hear talk of conspiracies and rebellions. You witness firsthand how Odo skillfully manipulates Edward. He plays on the king's piety, appealing to his religious sensibilities. He flatters Edward's ego, praising his wisdom and judgment. And he subtly undermines the influence of others, casting doubt on their motives and abilities. It's a masterful performance, and Edward seems completely oblivious to the manipulation. One particularly egregious example involves a dispute over land between two powerful earls. Edward, initially inclined to side with one of the earls, is swayed by Odo to rule in favor of the other. The decision is widely seen as unfair, and it creates a deep rift between the king and one of his most loyal supporters. You can practically smell the resentment brewing. One quirky detail: Odo seems to have a knack for accumulating wealth. He uses his position to acquire land, extract taxes, and generally enrich himself at the expense of the English people. He's like a medieval hedge fund manager, always looking for the next opportunity to make a profit. You try to voice your concerns to Edward, but you're met with a dismissive wave of the hand. The king trusts Odo implicitly and refuses to believe that he would ever act against the interests of the kingdom. You realize that you're fighting a losing battle, and that your influence is waning. The atmosphere in the court becomes increasingly oppressive. You feel like you're living in a Norman colony, with Odo acting as the de facto ruler. The English nobles are marginalized, their voices ignored, and their power diminished. It's a slow but steady erosion of English authority, and you fear that it will ultimately lead to disaster. Historians often point to Odo's influence over Edward as a key factor in the Norman conquest. By manipulating the king and undermining the English nobility, Odo paved the way for William to claim the throne. He was, in many ways, the architect of England's downfall. You struggle with your conscience. Should you speak out against Odo, even if it means risking your own life? Or should you remain silent, hoping to survive the coming storm? It's a difficult decision, and one that weighs heavily on your mind. It's like choosing between being a martyr and a collaborator. Neither option is particularly appealing, but you have to choose one. The king, under Odo's influence, proposes a mission. You are to travel to Normandy as his envoy. The stated purpose? To reaffirm Edward's friendship with William and to discuss matters of mutual interest. The real purpose, you suspect, is far more complex and potentially dangerous. You are chosen for this mission because you are known for your diplomacy, your discretion, and your loyalty to the king. You are also expendable, should things go wrong. Think of it as a medieval job interview, where the prize is a one-way ticket to Normandy and the potential for a swift and unpleasant demise. The English nobles are suspicious of this mission. They fear that Edward is secretly planning to name William as his successor, and that you are being sent to Normandy to formalize the arrangement. They warn you to be careful, to watch your words, and to protect England's interests. They practically stuff you with garlic and silver bullets, just in case. You accept the mission with a heavy heart. You know that you are walking into a political minefield, and that your actions could have far-reaching consequences. But you also feel a sense of duty to the king and to your country. You are determined to do your best, even if it means risking your own life. As you prepare for the journey, you gather information about Normandy and about William. You learn about his ambition, his ruthlessness, and his military prowess. You realize that he is a formidable opponent, and that you will need all your wits about you to navigate the Norman court. One quirky fact: crossing the English Channel in the 11th century was not exactly a pleasure cruise. The ships were small, the weather was unpredictable, and the risk of shipwreck was ever present. Seasickness, you imagine, was a constant companion. So, remember to pack your ginger ale. Oh wait. You bid farewell to your family and friends, knowing that you may never see them again. The journey is long and arduous, and the dangers are many. Pirates, storms, and hostile locals are all potential threats. You feel like you're embarking on a medieval version of Survivor, but with even higher stakes. The mission is shrouded in secrecy. Only a few people know the true purpose of your journey, and you are sworn to secrecy. You feel like a medieval spy, operating in the shadows and constantly looking over your shoulder. It's a stressful and isolating experience. Historians have long debated the significance of this mission. Some argue that it was a key turning point in the events leading up to the Norman conquest. Others believe that it was simply a diplomatic exercise, with little real impact. The truth, as always, is probably somewhere in between. You grapple with your own doubts and fears. Are you doing the right thing? Are you being used as a pawn in a larger game? And can you trust anyone, including the king himself? These questions haunt you throughout the journey, making it even more difficult and stressful. It's like being trapped in a medieval escape room, where the clues are cryptic, the puzzles are deadly, and the only way out is to solve the mystery before it's too late. You finally arrive on the shores of Normandy, weary but determined. The landscape is different from England, more rugged and imposing. The people are different too, speaking a dialect of French that you struggle to understand. You feel like a stranger in a strange land, acutely aware of your foreignness. You are greeted by Norman officials, who escort you to Rouen, the capital of Normandy. The city is bustling with activity, a hive of commerce and military preparation. You sense an air of ambition and energy, a feeling that something big is about to happen. You are introduced to William, Duke of Normandy. He is a tall, muscular man with a commanding presence. He radiates power and confidence, and you can see why he is such a successful ruler. He is also shrewd and calculating, and you know that you will have to be careful in your dealings with him. The Norman court is a far cry from the English court. It's more formal, more hierarchical, and more militaristic. You feel like you've stepped into a different world, one where strength and ambition are valued above all else. It's a bit like swapping a cozy cottage for a heavily fortified castle. You begin your negotiations with William, laying out Edward's message of friendship and cooperation. William listens attentively, but you can sense that he has his own agenda. He is interested in more than just friendship, he wants the English throne. One quirky detail, William was known for his love of hunting. He maintained vast forests for the purpose of hunting deer and other game, often displacing local populations in the process. He was, in essence, a medieval real estate developer, but with a penchant for venison. You quickly realize that William is not interested in compromise. He believes that Edward promised him the throne years ago, and he is determined to claim what he believes is rightfully his. He sees himself as the rightful heir to England, and he is not afraid to use force to achieve his goals. You meet with various Norman nobles, trying to gauge their opinions and allegiances. You discover that William has a strong base of support, but there are also some who are skeptical of his ambitions. Some fear that a war with England would be disastrous, while others simply don't trust William's leadership. The political landscape in Normandy is complex and shifting. Alliances are formed and broken, promises are made and forgotten, and everyone is vying for power and influence. You feel like you're navigating a treacherous maze, where one wrong turn could lead to your downfall. Historians have debated the nature of William's claim to the English throne. Some argue that Edward did indeed promise him the throne, while others believe that William fabricated the story to justify his invasion. The truth, as always, is a matter of interpretation and perspective. You begin to understand the scale of William's ambition. He is not just interested in becoming King of England, he wants to create a Norman empire, stretching across the English Channel and beyond. You realize that England is in grave danger, and that you must do everything in your power to protect it. It's like discovering that the friendly neighbor you invited over for tea is actually planning to build a giant, hostile fortress in your backyard. William presses you for assurances. He wants a firm commitment from Edward that he will be named as the heir to the English throne. He wants oaths of fealty from the English nobles, guaranteeing their support. He wants concrete evidence that England will accept him as their king. You are in a difficult position. You cannot make these commitments without Edward's approval, but you also know that William will not be satisfied with vague promises. You try to stall, to deflect, to buy time, but William is relentless. He's like a medieval car salesman, but instead of a slightly used chariot, he's selling you the idea of becoming King of England. Under immense pressure, you witness some English nobles who are present in Normandy, perhaps they'd been shipwrecked years prior and become naturalized Normans, swear oaths of allegiance to William. These oaths are carefully worded, ambiguous, and open to interpretation. But they are oaths nonetheless, and they carry significant weight. You question the sincerity of these oaths. Are these nobles truly loyal to William, or are they simply trying to appease him? Are they acting out of fear, or out of genuine conviction? You can't be sure, but you suspect that many of them are simply trying to survive. They're like medieval chameleons, changing their colors to blend in with the dominant power. William interprets these oaths as a sign of English support. He believes that he has secured the backing of key figures in the English aristocracy, and that his claim to the throne is now stronger than ever. He becomes even more confident and assertive, and you sense that he is preparing to make his move. One quirky observation: the practice of swearing oaths in the 11th century was a serious business. Oaths were considered sacred, and breaking them was seen as a grave offense, both in the eyes of God and in the eyes of society. However, oaths were also often used as tools of political manipulation, and their true meaning was often ambiguous. It's like signing a legally binding contract written in medieval legalese. You know it's important, but you have no idea what it actually means. You try to explain to William that the English nobles cannot simply swear allegiance to him without Edward's consent. You tell him that the succession is a matter for the English people to decide, and that he cannot simply impose himself on them. But William refuses to listen. He believes that he has a right to the throne, and he is not willing to let anyone stand in his way. You feel increasingly trapped. You are caught between Edward's instructions, William's demands, and the conflicting loyalties of the English nobles. You are like a medieval diplomat caught in a medieval tug-of-war, with England on one side and Normandy on the other. Historians debate the validity of William's claim to the English throne based on these oaths. Some argue that the oaths were freely given and that they represent a genuine expression of English support. Others claim that the oaths were coerced and that they are therefore meaningless. The debate continues to this day. You realize that the situation is spiraling out of control. William is becoming increasingly impatient, and the English nobles are becoming increasingly restless. You fear that a war is inevitable, and that England will be caught in the crossfire. It's like watching a slow-motion train wreck, knowing that you are powerless to stop it. You return to England, carrying the weight of your experiences in Normandy. You arrive back at court, but things feel different. There's a palpable tension in the air, a sense of impending doom. It's like returning home after a long trip, only to find that your house has been ransacked. You report back to Edward, recounting your meetings with William and the oaths that were sworn. Edward listens intently, but you can't tell what he's thinking. He seems distant, preoccupied, and increasingly frail. The king seems to have aged a decade in the time you've been away. You try to warn Edward about William's ambition and his determination to claim the throne. You tell him that England is in grave danger and that he must take action to protect the kingdom. But Edward seems unwilling to listen. He dismisses your concerns, saying that William is a friend and that he would never betray England. he probably still thinks his crocodile dung sunscreen is working perfectly. The English nobles are eager to hear your report. They gather around you, peppering you with questions about William and his intentions. They are relieved to hear that you did not make any binding commitments, but they remain deeply suspicious of William. You share your doubts about the sincerity of the oaths that were sworn in Normandy. You tell the nobles that you believe many of them were coerced and that they do not represent a true expression of English support. The nobles nod in agreement, confirming your suspicions. One quirky detail: the art of medieval diplomacy involved a lot of guesswork and interpretation. Diplomats had to be skilled at reading between the lines, deciphering hidden meanings, and assessing the true intentions of their counterparts. It was like being a medieval psychologist, trying to understand the inner workings of the minds of kings and nobles. You find yourself struggling to reconcile your experiences in Normandy with the realities of the English court. In Normandy, you saw William's ambition and his military strength. In England, you see Edward's weakness and the divisions among the nobility. You feel like you're living in two different worlds, and you can't reconcile them. You try to rally the English nobles, urging them to unite and prepare for a potential invasion. You tell them that they must put aside their differences and work together to defend their country. But it's an uphill battle. The nobles are divided by personal rivalries, political ambitions, and conflicting loyalties. Historians debate the impact of your report on Edward and the English nobility. Some argue that your warnings were ignored, leading to England's unpreparedness for the Norman invasion. Others believe that your report helped to galvanize some English resistance, even though it was ultimately unsuccessful. You feel a growing sense of despair. You see the storm clouds gathering on the horizon, and you know that England is ill-prepared to face the coming tempest. You feel like you're standing on the deck of a sinking ship, watching helplessly as the waves crash over you. It's like knowing the punchline to a really bad joke, but being powerless to stop it from being told. Edward's health takes a turn for the worse. He becomes increasingly weak and bedridden, and it's clear that his reign is nearing its end. The succession crisis intensifies, and the vultures begin to circle. The Future King of England show is entering its final episodes. You watch as the power struggle escalates. Harold Godwin's son, the most powerful Earl in England, begins to assert his authority. He takes control of the royal administration, strengthens the defences of the kingdom, and prepares for a potential challenge to his claim to the throne. Odo, meanwhile, continues to promote William's cause. He whispers in Edward's ear, reminding him of his supposed promise to William and urging him to name William as his successor. Odo is like a medieval parrot, constantly repeating William's name and trying to influence Edward's decision. The English nobles are divided in their loyalties. Some support Harold, seeing him as the best hope for preserving English independence. Others favour William, believing that he is the rightful heir to the throne. Still others are undecided, waiting to see which way the wind will blow. You find yourself caught in the middle of this power struggle. You are torn between your loyalty to Edward, your concerns about William, and your desire to protect England from invasion. It's like being trapped in a medieval game of tug-of-war, with England, Normandy, and your own conscience pulling you in different directions. One quirky observation: medieval medicine was, shall we say, not the most advanced. Doctors relied on a combination of herbal remedies, bloodletting, and prayer to treat illnesses. The success rate was variable. So, if you were Edward, you were probably better off just staying in bed and hoping for the best. You try to advise Edward, urging him to make a clear and unambiguous statement about the succession. You tell him that the future of England depends on his decision, and that he must choose wisely. But Edward is reluctant to act. He seems paralyzed by indecision, unable to make a choice that will inevitably alienate one faction or another. The atmosphere in the court becomes increasingly charged. Rumors fly, accusations are made, and tensions reach a boiling point. You feel like you're living in a pressure cooker, waiting for it to explode. Historians debate the reasons for Edward's inaction in the face of the succession crisis. Some believe that he was simply too weak and indecisive to make a difficult choice. Others argue that he was deliberately playing a waiting game, hoping to maintain peace and stability until his death. You fear that Edward's inaction will have disastrous consequences. You believe that it will embolden William, encourage Harold, and ultimately lead to a violent conflict over the throne. You feel like you're watching a slow-motion train wreck, knowing that it's only a matter of time before disaster strikes. It's like being stuck in a medieval escape room with no obvious exit. Edward is on his deathbed. The end is near. The court is hushed, everyone waiting with bated breath for the inevitable. It's like the final scene of a play, where the fate of the kingdom hangs in the balance. You are present at Edward's bedside, along with the other members of the royal court. You watch as the king struggles to speak, his voice weak and raspy. He's surrounded by candles and worried faces, a scene straight out of a medieval drama. In his final moments, Edward makes a confession. He speaks of his concerns about the future of England, his regrets about the past, and his hopes for the afterlife. His words are cryptic, ambiguous, and open to interpretation. Edward supposedly commended the kingdom to Harold's protection, or perhaps he was simply muttering about the price of Harold's favorite ale. The exact phrasing, as you recall it later, is muddy. It's as clear as mud, frankly. Did he name Harold as his heir? Did he simply ask him to protect the kingdom until a rightful heir could be found? No one can be sure. Odo is furious. He believes that Edward has betrayed William and that he has broken his promise to name him as his successor. He tries to challenge Edward's words, but he is silenced by the other members of the court. Odo, for once, is speechless. The English nobles are divided in their reaction to Edward's confession. Some believe that he has named Harold as his heir, while others believe that he has left the succession open to debate. The confusion only adds fuel to the fire. One quirky detail: deathbed confessions were a common practice in medieval times. People believed that the dying were closer to God and that their words carried special weight. However, deathbed confessions were also often used as tools of political manipulation, and their true meaning was often contested. It's like reading a medieval last will and testament. You know it's important, but you have no idea what it actually means. You try to make sense of Edward's words, but you find yourself struggling to understand their true meaning. Did he truly intend to name Harold as his heir? Or was he simply trying to maintain peace and stability until his death? You can't be sure. The ambiguity of Edward's confession creates a power vacuum. Harold is emboldened to seize the throne, while William is determined to challenge his claim. The stage is set for a conflict that will determine the fate of England. Historians have long debated the meaning of Edward's deathbed confession. Some argue that he clearly intended to name Harold as his heir. Others believe that he deliberately left the succession open to debate, hoping to avoid a civil war. The debate continues to this day. You feel a sense of foreboding. You know that Edward's death will unleash a storm of violence and that England will be plunged into chaos. You feel like you're standing on the precipice of a great abyss, watching helplessly as the world around you crumbles. It's like knowing the ending to a tragic play, but being powerless to change the script. Edward is dead. The news spreads like wildfire throughout the kingdom. The bells toll, and the streets are filled with mourning. But beneath the surface of grief, there is a sense of anticipation and unease. Harold Godwin's son acts quickly. He seizes the royal treasury, secures the support of the English nobility, and arranges for his coronation at Westminster Abbey. He is crowned King of England just days after Edward's death. You watch as Harold is crowned, feeling a mixture of hope and trepidation. You hope that he will be a strong and effective ruler, capable of defending England against its enemies. But you also fear that his claim to the throne will be challenged, leading to a bloody civil war. Odo is outraged by Harold's coronation. He sees it as a betrayal of Edward's promise to William and a blatant power grab by a usurper. He vows to avenge Edward's death and to ensure that William becomes King of England. The English nobles are divided in their reaction to Harold's coronation. Some support him, seeing him as the rightful heir to the throne. Others oppose him, believing that William has a stronger claim. The divisions within the English aristocracy weaken the kingdom and make it more vulnerable to invasion. One quirky detail: coronations in medieval times were elaborate and symbolic ceremonies. They involved the anointing of the king with holy oil, the presentation of the royal regalia, and the swearing of oaths of loyalty by the nobility. It was like a medieval reality show, where the winner got a crown and a kingdom. You try to assess the situation, weighing the pros and cons of Harold's reign. He is a skilled warrior, a capable administrator, and a popular leader. But he also faces a formidable challenge from William, who has the support of the Norman aristocracy and the backing of the Pope. You know that Harold's reign will be short-lived. William is determined to claim the throne, and he will not rest until he has conquered England. The Norman conquest is inevitable. Harold, you fear, might as well be wearing a target on his back. Historians debate the legitimacy of Harold's claim to the throne. Some argue that he was the rightful heir, chosen by Edward on his deathbed and supported by the English nobility. Others claim that he was a usurper who seized the throne illegally and betrayed the trust of the English people. You feel a sense of impending doom. You know that England is about to be plunged into a bloody conflict and that the future of the kingdom hangs in the balance. You feel like you're standing on the edge of a volcano, waiting for it to erupt. The Future King of England show is about to get *real. Odo's reaction to Harold's coronation is nothing short of volcanic. He explodes with rage, denouncing Harold as a traitor and a perjurer. He tears his robes, curses the English, and vows to unleash the full fury of Normandy upon them. He's basically the medieval equivalent of a Twitter meltdown. He rushes to William, his cousin, his duke, and his chosen champion. He paints a vivid picture of Harold's treachery, emphasizing the broken oaths and the stolen crown. He fuels William's anger, stoking the flames of ambition and revenge. William, already predisposed to invasion, is galvanized by Odo's passion. He sees Harold's coronation as a direct challenge to his authority and a declaration of war. He resolves to invade England and claim the throne by force. You imagine William, pacing in his war room, surrounded by maps and advisors. He weighs the risks and the rewards, calculating the odds of success. He knows that the invasion will be costly and dangerous, but he is convinced that the prize is worth the price. He's basically playing a high-stakes game of medieval chess, with England as the ultimate prize. Odo becomes William's chief strategist, his most trusted advisor. He uses his knowledge of England and its politics to help William plan the invasion. He identifies key targets, assesses enemy strengths and weaknesses, and helps to rally support for the Norman cause. One quirky historical detail: the Pope, Alexander II, gave his blessing to William's invasion, providing him with a papal banner to carry into battle. This gave William's campaign a veneer of religious legitimacy and helped to attract support from across Europe. It's like getting a divine endorsement for your hostile takeover. You picture Odo, traveling throughout Normandy, preaching the gospel of war and recruiting soldiers for William's army. He uses his religious authority to inspire his followers, promising them wealth, glory, and eternal salvation. He's basically a medieval motivational speaker, but with a decidedly martial bent. William begins to assemble his forces. He calls upon his vassals, his allies, and his mercenaries. He builds ships, gathers supplies, and prepares for the invasion. The entire duchy is transformed into a massive military camp. Historians often credit Odo with playing a crucial role in the Norman conquest. His fiery rhetoric, his strategic advice, and his organizational skills helped to transform William's ambition into a concrete plan of action. He was, in many ways, the architect of the invasion. You feel a growing sense of dread. You know that the invasion is coming, and that England is ill-prepared to resist it. You see the Norman ships gathering on the horizon, and you know that the end is near. The future King of England show is about to have its season finale, and it's not going to be pretty. You witness the preparations for the Norman invasion firsthand. The scale of the operation is staggering. Ships are being built at a furious pace, forests are being felled to provide timber, and blacksmiths are working day and night to forge weapons and armor. The entire Norman duchy is mobilized for war. You see thousands of soldiers gathering from across Normandy and beyond. They are a diverse bunch, representing a wide range of nationalities and social classes. There are Norman knights, Breton foot soldiers, Flemish mercenaries, and adventurers from all corners of Europe. It's like a medieval United Nations, but with a shared goal of conquering England. William is a meticulous planner. He leaves nothing to chance. He studies maps of England, analyzes the English defenses, and anticipates every possible contingency. He's like a medieval generalissimo, obsessed with details and determined to win at any cost. Odo oversees the logistical aspects of the invasion. He ensures that the troops are fed, clothed, and equipped. He manages the flow of supplies, coordinates the movement of ships, and maintains discipline within the ranks. He's basically the medieval equivalent of a quartermaster, but with a bishop's mitre. One quirky detail, the Bayeux tapestry, a magnificent work of embroidery that depicts the Norman conquest, was likely commissioned by Odo. It serves as a visual record of the invasion, glorifying William's achievements and justifying his claim to the English throne. It's like a medieval propaganda film, designed to sway public opinion in favor of the Normans. You overhear conversations among the Norman soldiers. They are confident, eager to fight, and convinced of their own superiority. They believe that they are destined to conquer England and to claim its riches for themselves. They're like medieval tourists, but instead of sightseeing, they're planning a hostile takeover. William inspires his troops with stirring speeches, promising them glory, wealth, and land in England. He reminds them of their duty to God and to their duke. He paints a picture of England as a land of opportunity, ripe for the taking. Historians often emphasize the importance of Norman organization and logistical planning in the success of the invasion. William's meticulous preparations and Odo's efficient management ensured that the Norman army was well equipped, well supplied, and ready to fight. You feel a sense of powerlessness. You know that the invasion is inevitable, and that there is nothing you can do to stop it. You watch as the Norman fleet sets sail, knowing that it is carrying the seeds of England's destruction. It's like watching a tsunami approach, knowing that you are about to be swept away. The future King of England show is about to reach its dramatic climax. The Norman fleet crosses the English Channel. The journey is perilous, with storms, pirates, and English warships posing a constant threat. But William's luck holds, and the fleet arrives safely on the shores of England. You are not on the front lines, but you're close enough to feel the tension. You hear reports of the Norman landing at Pevensey, the construction of a fortified camp, and the initial skirmishes with English forces. The invasion has begun. Harold Godwin's son is in the north of England, fighting off a Viking invasion. He receives news of the Norman landing and immediately marches south to confront William. He gathers his forces, but they are exhausted from the previous battle and outnumbered by the Normans. You can practically feel the weight of history bearing down. The Battle of Hastings is about to take place, and the fate of England hangs in the balance. You are witnessing one of the most important moments in English history, a moment that will forever change the course of the nation. You hear conflicting reports about the battle. Some say that the English are holding their own, others claim that the Normans are gaining the upper hand. The truth is difficult to discern amidst the chaos and confusion of war. The battle is raging, and the outcome is uncertain. One quirky detail: the Battle of Hastings was fought on foot, with both sides relying heavily on infantry. The Norman knights played a key role, but the battle was ultimately decided by the discipline and courage of the foot soldiers. Think of it as a medieval soccer match, but with swords and shields instead of balls and cleats. You imagine the scene on the battlefield: the clash of steel, the cries of the wounded, the thunder of horses' hooves. The air is thick with smoke and the stench of blood. The ground is littered with corpses and broken weapons. It's a scene of utter carnage and devastation. Harold is killed during the battle. The circumstances of his death are unclear, but it is widely believed that he was struck in the eye by an arrow. His death marks the turning point in the battle, and the English forces begin to crumble. Historians have analyzed the Battle of Hastings for centuries, trying to understand why the Normans were victorious. They point to William's superior tactics, the discipline of his troops, and the death of Harold as key factors in the Norman victory. You feel a sense of despair as you hear news of the English defeat. You know that Harold's death means the end of English independence and the beginning of Norman rule. You feel like you're watching the sun set on 1,000 years of English history. The Future King of England show has just aired its series finale, and the Normans have won. The Battle of Hastings is over. William is victorious. England lies defeated at his feet. The Norman conquest has begun. The world you knew is gone, replaced by a new order, a new language, and a new ruling class. You witness the aftermath of the battle. The English countryside is ravaged, the towns are looted, and the people are terrorized. William establishes his authority with ruthless efficiency, crushing any resistance and confiscating the lands of the English nobility. Odo is richly rewarded for his loyalty and service. He is made Earl of Kent, one of the most powerful and wealthy positions in England. He receives vast estates, commands a large army, and becomes one of William's most trusted advisors. You observe Odo as he consolidates his power. He builds castles, establishes new laws, and enforces Norman customs. He is a harsh but effective ruler, determined to maintain order and to protect Norman interests. Odo's essentially running a medieval franchise of the Norman conquest. One quirky, final detail: despite his wealth and power, Odo eventually fell out of favor with William's successors. He was accused of plotting against William the Conqueror's son and imprisoned for several years. Even the most powerful figures can fall from grace. You reflect on Odo's role in the Norman conquest. He was a key figure in the events that led to the invasion, and he played a crucial part in William's victory. He was a man of ambition, intelligence, and ruthlessness, and he left an indelible mark on English history. Historians have debated Odo's legacy for centuries. Some see him as a villain, a traitor, and an oppressor of the English people. Others view him as a capable administrator, a loyal servant of William, and a key figure in the creation of a new Anglo-Norman society. You contemplate the consequences of the Norman conquest. England was transformed by the invasion, with the English language, culture, and institutions all undergoing profound changes. The Norman conquest marked a turning point in English history, ushering in a new era of political, social, and economic development. You consider your own role in these events. You were a witness to history, a participant in a drama that changed the course of the nation. You did what you could to protect England, but ultimately, you were powerless to stop the Norman conquest. The future King of England show is over, and you're left to pick up the pieces. As the years pass, you see the blending of Norman and English cultures, the emergence of a new Anglo-Norman identity. The wounds of the conquest slowly begin to heal, but the scars remain. The memory of Odo, the confessor who forgot nothing, lingers in the minds of the English people.